Welcome into HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson, and it's a Monday morning early. So happy Monday. Good morning. And the Arkansas Razorbacks men's basketball, we say there's something to talk about daily, and we put our money where our mouth is. Look, the visit list has gone up by a player. We don't know a date yet, but we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about who that player is. We now have a new visit date scheduled for another player that we already had been talking a lot about upcoming visit for. So you have one change and one addition, although we're still waiting on the exact dates for the new addition. And then you're also going to have two other visitors that have been on the schedule in terms of publicly being planned, announced the planned visit dates for those. Those haven't changed as far as we know. So you're up to four total, three where we know the dates. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to go through, I'm going to update now that we're past, the summer practices. We've been past that really since mid-July. And we're waiting for players here later this month, probably in a couple of weeks, returning back to campus for the start of the fall semester, August 18th. They'll go back to limited practices for a while before ramping things back up to, fulsome practices leading into the season. And so in between here, we're going to have our first SEC power rankings coming up pretty soon. But today, I'm going to talk about my projected starters as of now, what the rotation looks like, and I'm going to put a minutes allocation out to get us to 200 minutes. So that's what we're going to do today. And then I have a brief update on another 2026 player. It's really a non-update, but it's to say that a visit hasn't been set up yet, and we're still kind of on hold to wait and see what happens there. But I did circle back to this recruit to see where things stood with Arkansas, and it's kind of in a holding pattern right now. So we're going to hit all of these things today. Once again, it's HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Thanks for joining in. Let's talk visits. Erfan Diane reached out to me, the 7-1 center, class of 2026, 280-pound Iowa United prep. We've talked so much about him. And the last time we had a segment here, we were on, I believe, a couple of days ago, and I'd spoken with his guardian. He said, that late August, that August 29th through 31 date, probably isn't going to happen. Almost certainly won't happen. We're going to look to take the visits in September and October. So we went through all of that, and they've got that live recruiting period when it starts September 3rd, where for at least a couple of days, they're inviting in as many D1 coaching staffs, head coaches or assistants to come into Iowa United Prep, to see their players. I guess they'll do like combine kind of workouts, that kind of thing. And then they wanted to announce visits after that, according to the Guardian. So that was on, I believe that was on Friday or Saturday. Well, Erfan Diane reached out to me, I think it was Saturday night. It was like 9:30 Central Time. Just had a DM in there, and I didn't see it for about 40 minutes. But he had DM'd me to say, "Hey, I've locked in these visit dates. I've put out these visit dates." And so I tweeted that. I tweeted out the visit dates, not only Arkansas, but they've updated them. Sure enough, the August 29th through 31st range of dates that would have been his visit had moved into September. And so September 12th to the 14th, that is a weekend where the football Hogs are off campus. They'll be playing a road game at Ole Miss. So Arkansas will not be, the football team and the fan base will not be on campus the weekend that Erfan Diane is coming in for a visit. That August 29th, 31 date, that was the season opener for football against Alabama A&M. So if it's a different date, we know that this staff will schedule visit dates when there's not a home football game, when they schedule visits during football season. So it's not unprecedented. And of the three known scheduled dates that we know of in terms of knowing the dates, two of those prospects will be on campus when there's not a home football game. So, the majority of the visits so far, as we know, the way that they're set up, that's the way it is. So Erfan Diane tells me September 12th to the 14th now. So that visit date has moved by a couple of weeks. Once he sent that to me and I tweeted that out, the next morning, Sunday morning, I had a message, a text from his guardian, Alex Victor, saying, "Hey, by the way, visit dates are still not fully locked in. We're still going to determine the 4 or 5 teams that are going to get visits, and those won't be announced any sooner than September 5th. So, this is mixed messaging. And I think what's going on here, I mentioned it before. The Guardian really is trying to play this close to the vest. He doesn't want a bunch of visit dates announced because they're trying to get multiple high major programs to come in for their open whatever session they're doing, or in early September, those first few days when the live recruiting period opens up. And if you release a bunch of visit dates, it may, blow let the air out of the sails for a lot of programs that are still trying to get in the mix and get him in for visit. So I get it. They're wanting to hold on to these dates. But I'm told, I have a separate source that's told me, yeah, that's the date for Deontay's visit is the 12th through the 14th. So, and then visits are subject to change even when they're scheduled. So just like just about everything else in recruiting, you don't ever feel like you have solid footing and solid ground under your feet when you talk about these things because they change so much. In this instance, we're getting mixed messaging from his camp. The player saying one thing, the Guardian's trying to, I guess, cloak these dates until the last minute, and it's just not working. This was an unsolicited, response from Arafan Deontay. I didn't ask him for an update. I just talked to his Guardian the day before, and we came on here and told you, well, visit date will probably be much, later, sometime in September or October. August 29th to the 31st is out. So I left it at that. The player reached out to me unsolicited, gave me the update. It took me about 40 minutes to see that I had a DM. I was doing something else Saturday night, and I did tweet that out late. And I noticed that it had already made the rounds a little bit on Twitter, or X, if you will. All right, so those are the dates for the talented, versatile 7-1 forward center that Arkansas has obviously prioritized. I think the other things that stood out in what Deontay sent me were not only the Arkansas visit dates, but the fact that he plans to go back to Houston. He was just at Houston's campus on Friday for an unofficial visit. He took a Saturday unofficial visit to SMU. Today begins a 17-day dead period in recruiting. So no off-campus visits, no on-campus visits. So coaches can't go off, players can't come on. 17 days of that, August 4th through the 20th. I know that sounds like 16, but you count each day at 17 days. And then you go to what's a quiet period where players can come onto your campus. And then that full live recruiting period opens up where coaches can go on the road, do in-homes, go to the high schools, that kind of thing on September 3rd. So all these dates are relevant right now in terms of players' visit activities. But outside of Deontay coming to Arkansas September 12th through the 14th, he's also got visits set up that he told me about. Kentucky, September 26th through 27th. We know Kentucky's kind of been late to the game with him, but Mark Pope, the head coach of the Wildcats, his wife, she's the sister of the head coach at Iowa United Prep. By the way, he's a first-year coach, so a new coach there. So there are ties there. Obviously Kentucky, the blue blood label, right? The brand. So September 26th to the 27th. And then an official visit to Houston, going back to Houston again. He was just there for an unofficial visit on Friday. Going back to Houston, the dates scheduled for that are October the 9th through the 11th. So, what's interesting about that is, again, he was just on that campus, but also Houston is perceived by many to be the front runner here. I think there's even a crystal ball or one of those projections that are out there predicting him to go to Houston. So, you're it looks almost like he's bookending, at least the way the schedule looks now. We'll see if he releases more visit dates or his camp does later. I was told they would take up to 4 or 5 official visits. So far, we know about these 3 based on what the player himself DM'd me over the weekend. Okay, let's not forget the following weekend after Deontay's now scheduled to be on Arkansas's campus 12th through the 14th. You've got the 19th through the 21st. So we go Friday through Sunday, 19th through the 21st for Jordan Smith Jr. Technically, it's put out as the 20th and 21st. I'll be surprised if he doesn't travel in and arrive and maybe have a dinner or some meet and greet with some of the staff, whatever, on Friday night, the 19th. Maybe he truly does come in sometime on that Saturday. Either way, it's that weekend of the 19th to the 21st. Jordan Smith Jr., second-ranked player in the country, a 5-star. I've got Deontay as the 6th best player in the country, a 5-star. So in my book, a couple of top 10 players right there with Jordan Smith Jr. Again, 6'2" out of Virginia, might be down to Arkansas, Duke, and Georgetown. That's what I keep hearing. I have varying opinions, as you know. based on source information I brought here, who the leader might be. But that weekend is the second visit that we know about chronologically, and it's also the second weekend that Arkansas football will not be hosting a game on campus. The Razorbacks will be playing on the road in Memphis that weekend, and so Jordan Smith Jr. coming in on a weekend where you won't have all the fanfare, but you'll have everything else, all the other bells and whistles that go along with an official visit. And both of these players obviously will be able to attend basketball practice. That's something else that's important. That's the sport they're coming to check out. But if you can maximize a weekend and bring them in when you've got the fan base in, especially during football season in Reynolds Razorback Stadium, that's a really great atmosphere up there, and they're going to miss on that. And then the next weekend, the following weekend, so it's back to back to back weekends where you have visits set up now. The following weekend, September 26th to the 28th, Tay Kinney, another 5-star guard. I've got him ranked 12th in my top 25, the 12th best player in that class. So just outside the top 10, 6'2" guard, Kentucky native, plays at Overtime Elite. This coaching staff's been on him for well before they ever got to Arkansas in terms of recruitment. He was the first class of 2026 player that I observed that was offered a scholarship once this staff got to Arkansas, so that's saying quite a bit. But he's scheduled to come in for his official visit again September 26th to 28th. That weekend, Arkansas is hosting a football game, and it's Notre Dame. That's a big one. So that'll be a special opportunity for Kenny. A lot of folks think the in-state schools lead there. Louisville, maybe maybe in the lead there. Kentucky pursuing. He's taken visits to those schools already. In addition to Purdue, he's got other visits set up. Jordan Smith Jr. right now has a visit set up in October to Kentucky, and he's already visited. He's already taken a couple of visits to Duke. Where else did he go? I think Louisville is where Jordan Smith Jr.'s been. And he might be entertaining other visits, even though his dad told me, if you remember this reporting back when we announced his visit dates to Arkansas, Dad said that's it, Arkansas and Kentucky. So we'll see about those three. So back to back to back weekends. But the other part of this intel, it's not really intel, it got put out yesterday by Jacob Polachek, who's a Kentucky Wildcats beat writer, does a good job there at KSR. But Jacob Polachek put an article out regarding Cole Clower, the 6'7" wing out of North Carolina, the North Carolina native. We did a segment on him right after Peach Jam ended, because right after Peach Jam ended is when Arkansas extended a scholarship offer. So we talk about the three guys already set up for visits. Arkansas's had the coaching staff has had a long relationship building courtship with those players. They're not Johnny come latelys or just jumping in the game with those guys. Cole Clower's a little different. Arkansas puts the offer out at the end of Peach Jam just a few weeks ago. And at the time, he had a top 8 schools list. And we talked about it on this segment. Arkansas offers on Sunday night, July 20th. The next day, Clower reports a Kentucky offer. So the Razorbacks of Kentucky jump in late. There were already 8 teams on the list. And so you're thinking, well, where can this go? And you think, well, Calipari's probably not going to make a scholarship offer unless he thinks he's got a real chance to get that player in for a visit. Sure enough, Cole Clower, according to Jacob Polachek, has a visit scheduled with Arkansas. Now, he doesn't have the dates for that. He didn't have the dates for it, other than he interviewed the dad, and the visit dates for several teams did get announced, including Kentucky. But Arkansas and UConn are 2 schools that apparently have visits set up, but the dates are unknown as of now. So we're efforting that to find out what dates are Cole Clower coming in. Remember the segment we did when he got that Arkansas offer? We went through him statistically in the EYBL season, especially in July, when Arkansas coaches were front and center to watch him a lot. 6'7", maybe pushing 6'8". A sharpshooter, I guess. I mean, 31% from 3 on about 6 threes per game in 6 games during Nike Peach Jam. So you're kind of looking at that going, okay, that's not insane. The volume's good on the attempts. But when you looked at the full body of his Nike EYBL session play, so that would have been 3 sessions in May and another one in the weekend before. The fourth session was the weekend before Peach Jam, and that was a live evaluation period. When you looked at that body of work, he was over 35% and averaging nearly 7 threes per game. So a little higher volume and a better percentage. But sometimes it's about when you're making shots and which coaches are there courtside to watch you when you're hot. Calipari was courtside to see him. I think it was July the 12th, which was a Saturday, which was during session 4, when his CP3 team CP3 17U squad defeated J.J. Andrews, Arkansas commitment, and Brad Bill Elite. So not only did they win the game, but Clower had a big shooting game, 5 of 10 from 3, 21 points. And then I think another time when Calipari was courtside to watch him, he was like 4 of 8 from 3. So he was knocking it down at a much higher percentage in the opportunities that Calipari was courtside to watch him. But again, I mentioned this. He's not just a three-point shooter. He's got a good frame, good size, good wheels, man. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's not, I wouldn't say he's below average athletically. He's just fine there, and he's got some real craft to his game in the mid-range. He's got some nice, uses his pivot foot well and little fadeaway rocker shots, and can get all the way to the rim. If you run him off that 3 line and give him a path, he's a guy that, and you understand why a lot of these higher level basketball programs are recruiting him and have been for a while. And we'll go through the list. So his original 8, as far as we know now, based on Politics reporting, he's gone from a top 8 to 7 known visits. And 3 of the teams that were in the announced top 8 just a few weeks ago are not, 3 of those teams are not mentioned right now in terms of having a visit. So we don't know if he reshuffled the deck once those Arkansas and Kentucky offers came through, but it kind of looks that way. So just to say that, the other visit dates that we know about, he is planning to visit North Carolina State. That's the home states, one of the 2 home state schools. He's from North Carolina. But North Carolina State is apparently getting a visit, reportedly, August 29th through the 31st. So getting one early there. Then you've got Florida, who's been, and Todd Golden's been recruiting him for a while. They've prioritized him on some level, but a Florida visit date of September 5th through the 7th. Kentucky this is a midweek visit. All of the other ones appear to be are weekend visits, but Kentucky is getting a midweek visit, which is interesting, like a Wednesday, Thursday, September 17th through 18th. And then North Carolina, another home state school, October 10th through the 12th. And then Alabama, another SEC team that's prioritizing, October 17th to the 19th. So those are the 5 visit dates, 5 schools where the visit dates are known. UConn is another one that Polachek reported has been set up, but he doesn't have the dates. And the same with Arkansas. So we're efforting that. When you start thinking about some of his visit dates, and when Arkansas is bringing in visitors through September, unless Arkansas has 2 official visitors on the same weekend, it's looking like the most likely thing, if you're going to bring him in on a weekend, will be in October. Arkansas has at least 2 home football game dates in October, at least a couple, I think. And so there'd be opportunities there. The other option would be to bring him in a midweek like Kentucky apparently is doing. So we don't know the dates yet. These are just speculative things, trying to look ahead until we do know, thinking about where could they slot him in. If you remember last year, they didn't bring multiple visitors in on official visits. When they brought in visitors, official visitors, each official visitor was the lone official visitor. I think only once or twice did they bring in some unofficial visitors to pair up with the one that was on an OV. And then you had Darius Acuff, who came in, who had already had his official visit, already committed to Arkansas. He came in as sort of a recruiter. So I don't know, I'm assuming those were unofficial visits. So he was on campus with official visitors, but that was strategic more so than bringing in a player that was already committed and already taken an OV, right? So again, we'll see what they do with Cole Clower. We'll see if we learn how soon we can find out how soon those visit date can be set for Arkansas in terms of going public. And look, this is a guy top 25 rated, so a 4-star by most. And I think, again, When you look at the size, 6'7", 6'8", this may not be the typical plus athlete at the wing spot, but the guy does have some height and size, which is, in Calipari's wheelhouse, and can bring us an element of shooting, something we haven't seen in his recruiting yet, identifying guys that are just big volume perimeter shooter guys. We can say Malik Thomas is that. So I guess we could say that, but at that wing spot so far, but Malik's really more of a two. At the wing spot, the point I'm making is we really haven't seen that, and so this would be someone that would be fit that description. So a little bit of a course correction or course change, if you will, in terms of players that Calipari's pursuing. The late offer, the late visit. We know Arkansas is not going to escalate NIL beyond evaluation they set for each player. So it's not like Arkansas will overpay to land a player like this that they got in on late. And so we'll just see where this goes. Fascinating, though, because this would be the fourth known visit date. All right, let's move on. I'm going to throw in just a tidbit here about Mikael Bruce McCroman, the 2026 wing out of Pittsburgh that we know Calipari and his son, Brad Calipari, were back-to-back weekends courtside to watch him. Probably the player he was talking about, identifying as a long-term retention piece, somebody that would, be more of a developmental in the line of that. And we've talked a little bit about him. I just circled back with him over the weekend saying, hey, are there any updates with Arkansas or anything else? And he said, not at this time. And so we just wonder now, did Calipari get to a point where he moved beyond that, moved on? Or are they still at some point looking at adding him to the roster, whether it remains 2026, which is what I think would stay class of 2026 at this point, or even still that idea that maybe he's a reclass candidate and just going to get out of high school earlier and work on development at the college level, start sooner doing it at the college level than using his senior season of high school. I guess that's always a possibility, but I think probably 26 if he stays that way. And again, this is not one of those top tier rank kind of guys when you look at the national recruiting services and that kind of thing. So it would really be a situation of like Calipari described. Can't mention the player's name because it's a recruit, but more of a developmental, long-term kind of thing. So the no update is the update there. All right, let's get into the starters and minute allocations. This is something that I've done a few different times, and now just trying to figure out how these 200 minutes, chop up 200 minutes in a game. It's a 40-minute game. You got 5 players on the court at all times. So that's math. That's 200 minutes. And so it's got to be allocated. And so the starting lineup really hasn't changed much for me. It starts for me right now with DJ Wagner last year around 35 minutes per game, over 34. I could see a pathway where something similar happens again, but I'm projecting right now just based on trying to balance this out and what I think are fair minutes allocations for others and making those numbers work. I've got him at 30. I've got him at 30 and leading the way in minutes again for the team. So he did it last year. I've got him as the team leader at 30 minutes. So, I've been pretty consistent with that. But again, I see a world and a path where he's, anywhere from 33 to 35 minutes in that range again, like he was last year. But for now, we're going to have him at 30. And I've got him starting out as a combo guard, really kind of beginning games, maybe off the ball a little bit. Who knows exactly how this plays out, but Darius Acuff Jr., the true freshman, the incoming top 5 rated 5-star, I've got as the starter at the 1 to begin games. And I've got him now. I had him as a 30-minute projection before. I certainly see a world where he gets 30 or more. I can see that. But for now, I'm going to slot him with 28 minutes per game. I've got Acuff at 28. That's probably a little low, but I'm trying to make the numbers work now in terms of what I think is a fair minute allotment for every player coming into it. It won't be perfect, but that's where I've got it now. So that's your 1-2. That's your starting backcourt when you look at Acuff and DJ. And I always wonder, is there going to be an awkward, dynamic there like we saw last year with Boogie Flan and DJ Wagner on the court? We've talked about that quite a bit. Or will there be some level of this is different this time and it fits better? We don't know. So we'll see. But those are your 1-2 for me in your starting lineup. At the 3 spot, I've got Carter Knox. I've had minute projections for him at 30 minutes per game in the past. Right now, I'm slotting him at 27. I'm down just a few minutes. Again, 30 or more minutes for him will not be a surprise. I see all three of those guys as having all league potential. All three of them with the potential for all league. And Carter Knox at the wing spot, you're starting three at 27 minutes per game. Another all league caliber kind of guy. And I think the guy that in the summer proved to be Arkansas's best player, at least for the summer, Trevor Brazile at the four. You're going now. DJ listed 6'4", Acuff 6'2", Knox 6'6", Trevor Brazile 6'10". Good morning and happy Monday, everyone. All right, there's a good comment. Good morning to you as well. But Trevor Brazile at the four, and I've got him now at a 25-minute allotment. We'll see if that could be more. He'll be the primary. He'll be holding down the fort primarily at the four spot. But the more and more we looked at Malik Ewan as a 4-5, I think both of those guys, Trevor Brazile and Malik Ewan, are 4-5s, meaning they can play the four, play the five, because they can space the floor a little bit with different, whether it's shooting, in Malik Ewan's case, a plus ball handler at his size and position, a crafty scorer. Offensively, I think they're both 4-5s. I think defensively, Trevin's probably a little more suited defensive versatility for both positions. And I think Nick Pringle is defensively is maybe a little more versatile suited to call him a 4-5 combo. So there's ways you could do that. That's why I think that three-headed 6'10" and taller setup with Brazile, Malik Ewan, and Pringle make a lot of sense why maybe Calipari didn't add a fourth guy, which is effectively what you had last year when you counted a guy like Adu Thero, who started, but he was, with him, Brazile coming off the bench, and then you had two bigs, Big Z and Jonas Adu, that now been replaced by Ewan and Pringle. You had a 4 deep. Now you're at 3. But you may have more positional versatility with those 3 in total. And I think 4 or 5 on both ends, there's a case to be made that each one can do that. But TB starting at the 4 at 25 minutes. Now, I've been back and forth. I've waffled. I've gone back and forth based on their performances and things we were hearing out of the Performance Center with Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle starting at the 5. I think it's a coin toss, and I think they both bring starter value. But for today's exercise, I'm going to go with Malik Ewan as the starter at the 5. I'm back to Malik Ewan starting at the 5. If you want to begin games setting a tone defensively, you might start Pringle. And that might be who gets on the court first, with Ewan coming off the bench with starter value. I mean, those both players are going to bring starter value, and they'll be playing their share of minutes. If you want to start with more offensive punch, then maybe a Malik Ewan. So for now, let's go Malik Ewan. I've got him at 23 minutes per game, but I've got it as a coin toss. Both of them with starter value, and I've got Nick Pringle at 22 minutes per game. So if you add that up, that's 75 minutes. That's 70 minutes that I've got allocated to those players. And for those two positions, for those 3 players, 70 minutes. For those 2 positions, you would have 80 minutes per game. So the other 10 means that one of those bigs will be on the floor and not 2 for 10 minutes. And the other 10, like a Carter Knox or Billy Richmond III, will be a very small ball 4 when you're running out 2 wings and 2 guards, or 3 guards, a wing, and a big. So there will be some minutes. So I might be undercutting the minutes of the bigs right now just a little bit. It might be closer to 75 minutes where 2 of those 3 are on the court together. Speaking of Trevor Brazile, Malik Ewan, and or Nick Pringle. Billy Richmond III coming off the bench, I've got that the way it looks now, but also a guy that brings starter value, big part of the retention, 25 minutes per game. So I bumped him up. I had him at 20 in my previous projection. I've got him at 25 now. And I've kept Malik Thomas, who I think coming off the bench again, because I think you're going to see Acuff and DJ starting games together. I think Malik Thomas will come off the bench, and I've got him allocated for 20 minutes. So that's your top 8 rotation. That's the one group of players that I've said throughout that I can envision meaningful, significant roles and a minutes kind of allocation. A lot of this stuff won't be pristine. It won't be exactly the way we've pitched it. here. But the way I did these minutes today gets us to exactly 200 minutes for those 8 players. And you say, what about a guy like Malik Sealy, who I've got the freshman wing out of Springdale, is Arkansas's 9th man? They went 9 deep last year before injury set in. You know, Billy Richmond and Big Z were kind of the 9th men, and then once Big Z for a while was a starter, so it was kind of Billy Richmond for a while. Then you had attrition, and by the end of it, you were down to a 6 or 7 deep, and Big Z was on the back end of that, right? He was getting the fewest minutes. So things can change throughout the course of a season and will. So how does Isaiah Sealy, a guy I see as a viable rotation piece in theory, but it's still a theory, and I've already spoken for all the minutes. Some of these minutes allocations I think are a little low for some guys, which means if they're higher than I just said, that means other guys, it's coming from somewhere. So some of these other top 8 guys will be getting even fewer minutes than you think they're probably worthy of getting. So it does kind of leave an odd man out thing for a guy like Isaiah Sealy in terms of projecting a game-to-game minutes average. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to plug in. I don't know how much or how soon. He's obviously going to average minutes at some point, because I don't think he's going to be a glorified walk-on that only sees the court a few, 2 or 3 or 4 times, which was the case for all of those guys that weren't in the top 9 last year. I think it'll be different for him. I just don't have an average of minutes to give him right now to balance and get it to 200 without whacking away at others who I know aren't going to play that few minutes that I would have whacked them down to. So, and here's the thing also, 200 minutes in a game with over 5 positions. But at the end of the day, when you look at statistically at a team on their season, if you add up players' minutes averages, it's always more than 200, because some guys miss games. But when you miss a game and don't play, it doesn't count towards your average. The only thing that counts toward your average are the games you play. So by game-to-game foul trouble, any injuries that hold players out either for the entire game or for part of the game, they come out gimpy and maybe don't play as many minutes that game. Illness that keeps players out or causes them to have limited minutes, like we saw last year, are going to open up opportunities for guys like Isaiah Sealy, perhaps even Paulo Cimito, the incoming 7-1 freshman center. Both of those guys are top 100 ranked, inside the top 70 when you looked at the, like ESPN's final high school rankings for that class of 2025. So Sealy seems to me to be the next man up at 9, Paulo Cimito at 10. How much they play, I think Sealy will probably have a bigger role, as my guess. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that based on where things are now. But Cimito hasn't even been on campus yet, and he'll have the benefit of going through the fall work and catching up and seeing what he can bring. But again, I can envision those 2 guys getting on the court more so than, again, in just those walk-on, mop-up situations. And certainly there'll be opportunities for them to get on the court when you do have a blowout and some kind of lopsided score. Everybody else, Kareem Artal, Elmir Javic, who's the other 7-footer coming in, hasn't been on campus yet. Artal missed most of the summer work with an injury, with I think a back injury. And so, when you look at it from that standpoint, these are not players that I think more developmental and long term and take a look at later, not really even, factoring into some kind of game-to-game vision and a role. I think there's potential again there for Sealy and Cimito. That's why we kind of awkwardly said, yeah, they're going to play, I think. How much game to game? What does that look like? I don't know yet. At the end of the day, for Sealy, I feel even more certain about there'll be some kind of a role. All right, nearly 34 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Hope you have a great Monday. Hope you have a great week. If something worth reporting breaks later that we just got to go live again, we will. If not, we'll be back on tomorrow. We're certainly going to spend time today efforting the visit dates for Cole Clower at Arkansas. Someone else may put that out, so we'll pay attention to that. And then I'll come back to the comment section and add that in later today if we get those dates. If not, we'll hopefully have them by tomorrow or very soon, because we're going to find out at some point. But remember, right now, there will be no visits. Today's the first day of a 17 consecutive day dead period. And, today we talked minutes and starters. Who are your starters? who's coming off the bench. Obviously, what does that look like? We didn't really talk dynamics of how things fit and what are the strengths, maybe some of the weaknesses, and some of the personnel groupings that might look good together, whether you start or not. We'll do that on another day. Maybe this week. Maybe this week we'll go into more about what that looks like. And then at some point soon, again, I'm going to have an SEC power rankings to, an early one, probably do one in August, another one, if not September, October, before we get into exhibition season. And so hopefully I'll have at least two versions of that prior to when the season starts again, as soon as this month, and maybe before they even get back to campus and reboot with practices. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Please hit subscribe, like, and share if you haven't done it already. Again, I'm Kevin McPherson. Thanks for being here. Be good. Until next time, appreciate all of you. See you soon.